His name is Buddha, and he's an Instagram star. This male alpaca from a herd in Chile has developed neutralizing antibodies against several COVID-19 variants. And a Sicilian village has a COVID-19 vaccination rate of over 100%. How did they do it? But first, coronavirus infection rates are soaring worldwide, Germany included. Omicron is far more contagious than previous variants.
Berlin is an Omicron variant hotspot in Germany. Before every shoot, our entire team gets tested. All three of us are negative. For me, life under pandemic conditions has become routine. Despite Omicron, I head to the Keller market in the centre of Berlin. There are crates of fruit and vegetables on sale here for prices lower than at the surrounding supermarkets. Masks are mandatory here.
In Corona times, everything's cheaper. Corona's destroying our business. 1 for €1, 2 are €2.
With thousands of customers a day, are you afraid of catching COVID?
I'm vaccinated, fully vaccinated, but the fear's still there. You can still catch corona when you're vaccinated. The risk is there. A completely ordinary person comes and you think everything's completely normal. And suddenly 10 people are infected. That's how corona spreads. Hello everyone. Please keep your distance. I'm vaccinated, but you might not be. Here you go.
For almost 2 years, COVID-19 and its new variants have kept the world on tenterhooks. At first, no one was sure exactly how the virus spread. Every place people gathered, including markets, was seen as a risk. So the Keller market also closed for a while in 2020. Later, red barrier tape ensured customers and vendors maintained the required distance. The barriers have disappeared, but there are lots of security guards who make sure people are wearing their masks. Regular customers keep coming all the same.
I shop here every Saturday.
Are you afraid of getting coronavirus here?
Not in the slightest. We're out in the fresh air.
Do you feel safe here?
Definitely. Normally there are more security guards, but everyone's wearing their masks, as you can see.
You're never in one place for more than 5 minutes. You get your things and move on.
People flock here from all over the city to stock up on food. Like this man. He was double vaccinated but still got COVID. Do you worry about what's happening with the coronavirus situation in Berlin?
I do worry, because this other infection has arrived, the Omicron variant. But we just have to live with it. What else can you do? It's fate. If it happens, it happens. That's what I believe.
That's what many think here at the Keller market. They all know that no one is completely immune.
Infection rates are rising sharply in Italy as well, even though nearly 90% of the population aged 12 and over has been double vaccinated. Of those, 2/3 have even received a booster shot. But one Sicilian village has outdone them all, posting a vaccination rate of more than 100%.
A small miracle has once again been achieved by the Sicilian village of Palazzo Adriano. 30 years ago, the town square was made world famous by the movie Cinema Paradiso, and now the township at the foot of the Monte delle Rose has again managed the extraordinary. in their fight against the coronavirus. They still remember the fear they felt during the first wave. Signora Mima recalls watching footage of military trucks transporting piled-up coffins out of Bergamo in northern Italy. People here wanted to prevent something like that happening in their own town at all costs.
We were
scared of the virus.
un'influenza molto più imponente.
In the beginning, we thought it was a type of severe flu. But then, what we saw on television told us that it was something altogether different. And the entire village had the same thought: vaccinate.
In this hardware store, everyone has to wear a mask. Mima wants to do all she can to protect against the new Omicron variant.
Yes, and it's the right thing to do. You have to protect yourself, just like you have to protect others. We are vaccinated, but still, you have to be careful.
In fact, Palazzo Adriano has a vaccination rate other European cities can only dream of. Going by official statistics, 104% of the population are vaccinated. That statistical quirk isn't a cinematic fantasy, but due to the fact that the figure includes visitors who were vaccinated right here, in the Cinema Paradiso Museum, which just happens to be housed in the town hall's largest room.
This is the Cinema Paradiso Museum. The film is still important to us. So locating our vaccination center here was common sense, but also about a sense of community.
And so, against a backdrop of movie posters, 3 major vaccination campaigns were held here. For the mayor, a well-functioning vaccination campaign is about more than numbers.
In these times, vaccination means freedom, provided to us by the government. It's about freedom for everyone. And I'm sorry that vaccination opponents don't understand that there's also a lot of democracy in the vaccines.
And there's a lot of hope too. The infection rate here has been close to 0 thanks to the measures taken. That evening, Mima and her husband invite friends to their house for dinner. They plan to once again watch their own local cult film, Cinema Paradiso. Back in the day, Mima's husband helped build the set on the piazza. They all know the dialogue by heart.
The film means everything to us. Most of all, though, it's the hope that our town has a good future.
They're proud of their town and of their coronavirus response. Here in Palazzo Adriano, people stand together so that the virus doesn't stand a chance.
But will these vaccines also protect against the Omicron variant? What do we know so far about this variant? Our science correspondent Derek Williams has answers to your questions, like this one from YouTube viewer Luis M. How does Omicron differ from earlier virus variants?
Omicron is pretty different from previous variants. Compared to the original version of the virus, its genome carries mutations in more than 50 places. Around 36 of them affect what's called the spike protein, that structure that juts out all over the place on the virus's surface. And the thing is, alterations to it can have major effects in a couple of different ways. First, because the spike protein is what SARS-CoV-2 uses to dock onto cells and infect them. So mutations in it can potentially make Omicron even better at that. And second, because the spike protein is the target of many of the COVID vaccines that we've developed. Its structure plays a key role in training the immune system to recognize future virus infections. So if the spike changes too radically in a new variant, then defenses like antibodies might no longer recognize it as well, or even at all. It could start evading immunity. We're still learning about the ways that Omicron differs from previous versions of the virus, but skyrocketing cases in many countries clearly make it the most infectious variant that we've seen so far. Scientists think that like Delta, some of Omicron's increased transmissibility probably has to do with spike mutations that help make it better at grabbing on to the membrane receptors that provide an entryway into a cell's interior. Another hypothesis holds that people infected with Omicron might be shedding more of the virus, since some studies show that it seems to replicate massively and rapidly and closer to your mouth and nose. So in the respiratory tract, above the lungs, and less in the lungs themselves. By the way, that might also be a big reason why Omicron is proving less deadly than its cousins, because in a lot of people, it seems to spare the lungs. But at the top of the list of differences between Omicron and other variants is how good it seems to be at dodging immune defenses in both people who've been vaccinated and in those who've recovered from previous bouts with other variants. Delta could evade immune defenses as well, but not nearly as well as Omicron seems to be able to. And if defenses no longer mostly protect people from infection, experts say, then that could help explain a lot of the steep rise in cases that we're seeing, even in heavily vaccinated countries. But that doesn't mean that vaccines or previous infections provide no protection at all. People who are unvaccinated and have never had COVID still make up the majority of patients in ICUs. So even with Omicron, previous infection or vaccination appears to help prevent severe infection in most people, especially if they've received a booster shot.
Israel has decided to launch another round of booster vaccinations to help quash the Omicron variant. The country has approved a fourth dose for all Israelis aged 60 and over, medical workers, and immunocompromised people. The country is currently registering its highest infection rate since the start of the pandemic.
The line for a COVID-19 test is long at this official centre in Tel Aviv. With the Omicron variant spreading fast, free PCR tests are now reserved for people over 60 and other high-risk groups. Everybody else is required to take an antigen test first. With ever-changing rules, patience is running low.
Basically, the rules change on a daily basis. There's a joke that if you refresh the news page, then you get different restrictions and different rules.
It feels like a circus. If they cancel the PCR tests, then they should let us do the antigen testing at home and send our kids back to school. Now we have to stand here, can't work, and just have to stay at home.
Israel made an early bet on its rapid vaccination campaign. In October, it had successfully slowed down the Delta wave by administering a third booster shot. But now, the country is struggling with the Omicron variant.
We're talking a variant that is spreading very fast. The incubation period is about 2 days, not 7 days as used to be. So this is why many of the epidemiological measures, especially testing and breaking chain of transmission, are much less efficient right now.
Much of Israel's COVID strategy has been focused on vaccination. Over 4.3 million Israelis have taken the third booster shot, less than half of the population of roughly 9.4 million. Since last week, the country has begun to roll out the fourth booster for people over 60, medical staff and other high-risk groups.
Okay. Each time we boost, we fortify our immune response, we deepen the immune memory and enhance our ability to cope more efficiently with the variants that are already challenging us and those that will, and unfortunately, will emerge.
But it's still unclear how hospitals will cope during this fifth wave. At Ichilov Hospital in Tel Aviv, family doctor Laura Azuri takes us to the COVID-19 ward. Not every bed is occupied right now, but numbers of severely ill patients are increasing daily. A majority are unvaccinated or have underlying health conditions.
At the moment, some of our patients are vaccinated, some are not. Everyone hospitalized has underlying health conditions, heart, kidney conditions, or diabetes. But again, the vaccinations are very important and very effective.
After so many waves of this disease, there's a sense of experienced routine on this ward. And now, newly authorised drugs can be given to patients early on. Still, after 2 years, it's not just hard for doctors and nurses to keep up, but for everyone, struggling with the new uncertainty that's replicating along with this latest variant.
How much protection do booster shots provide against COVID-19 and variants like Omicron? Some countries are considering a fourth vaccine. We ask infectious disease specialist Timo Wolf what lies ahead.
Thanks for your time, Dr. Wolf.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
You belong to a working group at University Hospital Frankfurt that focuses on COVID-19 developments. And according to one of the group's latest publications, the booster effectiveness of BioNTech vaccines is found to have been reduced by 27 times against the Omicron variant. Now, I've had my booster shot. Does your new discovery mean I'll still get infected at some point?
Yes, well, let me quickly explain what we actually did in these experiments, which was essentially that blood was taken from patients who had been vaccinated or recovered, and also, we used some of the drugs that are available on the market, which are essentially monoclonal antibodies, and measured the ability of the antibodies to neutralize the virus in a cell culture. A couple of weeks later, this effect on the neutralization capacity has been paralleled in real life data that showed that the vaccine's protection against Omicron variant has been reduced by around 40 to 60%, but it's not zero. But what we also learned is that patients who have been boosted are very strongly protected against a severe form of the disease. So there is still a very beneficial effect.
Vaccine manufacturers are working on vaccines adapted to the Omicron variant, but new variants will come eventually. Then we'll need new vaccines again. So isn't it going to be an endless loop?
It's likely that vaccines will have to be adapted to new variants. Is it going to be an endless loop? Well, we will have to see, but I think it's worthwhile trying to parallel the situation with what we had with influenza vaccines, where we actually have a very strong and a good idea of seasonality of the infection, and where we are adapting the vaccines. And it's not unlikely that this will have to be done for COVID as well.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf.
Thank you so much.
And now for some animals with superpowers, such as sharks, camels, and their cousins in South America. Scientists have found neutralizing antibodies to the coronavirus and its variants in these species. Could animals help bring an end to the pandemic that probably began in an animal, namely bats, in China?
At first glance, this South American alpaca looks like an ordinary animal. But scientists think it could help us fight the coronavirus pandemic. A herd of 19 alpacas are living on the campus of Austral University in Valdivia, southern Chile. Biochemist Alejandro Rojas is conducting research working with the alpacas.
This male alpaca is called Buddha. He's developed neutralizing antibodies against a number of COVID-19 variants, including Omicron.
The scientists first vaccinated the alpaca with surface proteins from the COVID-19 virus. Then they took a blood sample and found nanobodies that can neutralize SARS-CoV-2 viruses. Nanobodies are much smaller than normal antibodies. Their structure is also less complex and they're quite easy to reproduce, using yeast cultures, for example. Nanobodies are only produced by camelids, so alpacas, llamas, camels and dromedaries, and by sharks. Even before the pandemic began, Rojas and his team founded and publicized an initiative aimed at combating emerging viruses. But they didn't have any animals to work with until an unexpected visitor turned up.
In 2019, a Buddhist monk who wants to help us came to visit. He gave us 4 alpacas. One of them was Buddha. Then we have Dilgo, Tara, and Pedro. They haven't just produced antibodies to fight SARS-CoV-2 like Buddha, but against other viruses too, like Nipah virus and Hendra virus. Pedro here, for example.
The research doesn't harm the alpacas. Once a year, they're vaccinated by vets who then take a small sample of blood. The animals are cared for by veterinarian Teresa Pinto.
They're like pets. They eat out of our hands. We take care of them and love them. At first, they wouldn't come near us. But now they're no longer stressed by our presence. We treat them very well. The alpaca's well-being is extremely important to us.
In Valdivia, in southern Chile, at Austral University's Laboratory for Medical Biotechnology, Rojas and his team have patented 30 nanobodies that directly target SARS-CoV-2 viruses. Now they want to use the alpaca's nanobodies to develop a drug to treat COVID-19. This involves mixing the alpaca nanobodies with a fragment of a human antibody so that it is accepted by the human immune system. The drug could be inhaled or administered in the form of a nasal spray or injection and help to prevent severe or fatal cases of COVID-19. But the scientists need financial support to develop the drug, and so far the Chilean government hasn't offered funding.
It's not just about developing an antiviral therapy for SARS-CoV-2, but also showing that here, in a remote place like southern Chile, we're capable of developing a technology that can help bring a global pandemic under control.
The scientists in Chile aren't the only ones researching alpaca nanobodies. There's a similar initiative underway at the University of San Francisco. And in Germany, the University of Bonn and the Max Planck Institute in Göttingen are engaged in nanobody research. But the scientists here in Chile are a step ahead.
One of the big advantages of developing antibodies from camelids in Chile is that here the alpacas and llamas are in their natural habitat.
At the university campus, the alpacas have their own enclosure covering more than 3 hectares of land, where they're free to roam, sleep and feed. The scientists haven't just given the alpacas names, they've also discovered distinct personality traits.
Buddha is a bit shy. When new people are around, he won't eat out of my hand. He's not so keen on people he doesn't know. But others, like Dario, for example, will eat out of anyone's hand. They all have different personalities.
Despite his shyness, Buddha is quite the star on social media. He has nearly 17,000 followers on Instagram alone.
The alpacas provide an alternative solution to monoclonal antibodies that is much cheaper. In the coming years, we'll probably see many products developed in the immune systems of these animals.
With the necessary funding, the alpacas may be able to help us both in this pandemic and in future ones too. Alejandro Rojas and his team are convinced of that.